I'm Jim Demile. Thank you for buying the Bruce Lee 1 3-inch Power Punch. Now, it's very important that you recognize that in order to apply this unique punch correctly, you're going to have to learn each segment. Don't get into a hurry to have speed and power and demonstrate it to your friends. Take your time to learn each segment so that you can bring them all together into one smooth, flowing, dynamic expression of energy. Patience is a very important part of any training. Most of the people who had difficulty in the past in learning this punch had it because they were in a hurry. Don't be in a hurry. Now, and also, most cases, a lot of people put a little too much energy into it and they sprain their wrist or the joints of their hand. This is something that you really want to avoid. If you do hurt yourself, please stop practicing till it completely heals. Now, I've put in a few precautions, a few exercises to help strengthen the wrist and the joints. Also, you want to be able to really qualify with anybody you work with that they're in good health, especially their lungs and heart. And anytime you hit any partner in practice, always make sure that they have a well-padded vest or a phone book. I prefer a phone book. And I've demonstrated a little later in the tape on how to use it properly. But in reality, never, really try and hit as hard as you can when you're working with an opponent. It's very dangerous, this punch. In fact, you want to make sure never to hit over the heart, because it's an internal punch. It's an explosive punch. It's a concussion punch, and it tends to shock the inside organs. So, do not hit over the heart. When you use a phone book, hit in the general area of the solar plexus, because that affects the lungs as far as the lungs can feel the blow and they sort of pop a little bit, and the partner can tell if the punch is correct. Also, never hit in the kidney area. In the head, never hit the jaw in such a way that you snap the head back and cause a shock to the spine or to the brain. It's very dangerous. You can actually break the spine, or you can create such shock to the brain as to create brain damage. This is not a toy. It's not a game. It's only meant for reality, for the street. If you're confronted by an aggressor or a mugger, you want something that'll wipe him out in a split second. And that's what this is designed for. It's one of Bruce Lee's favorite punches, because he knew that regardless of how big this opponent was, he could take him out instantly. So again, don't be concerned with speed or power. Just learn to relax. Learn to focus and concentrate. And a very big part of your initial training is to meditate, to push away all outside disturbances and distractions and just focus on your training itself. Now, towards the end of the tape, I've put in a couple meditation techniques that hopefully will help you not only get rid of tension and distractions, but also to concentrate and bring your energy flow into one dynamic, harmonious expression. So anyway, enough talking. Please get on with your training. Best of luck. This is the Bruce Lee 1 3-inch Power Punch. Copyright 1989. Now let's get on with a few of the precautions. Are the areas that are injured the most when practicing the power punch. These are the areas that most martial artists really don't develop. They don't exercise these areas, especially the lower two knuckles. Now, in order to minimize injury to these areas while you initially develop them, I recommend that you use an ACE bandage. This is a bandage that you can get at any drugstore, and it's usually a little too long, so cut it in half. But it should be the type that you can wrap and it sticks to itself, rather than to use a clip or something that might cut or scrape something. Now, when you put it on, keep your fingers apart a little bit and keep your hand expanded so that when you put it on, it doesn't make the hand too tight. So when you close it into a fist, it doesn't choke the hand off. And towards the end, wrap it around the wrist a few times so that you give a little support to the wrist. If you have a weak wrist, then wrap it maybe once or twice more.
But the main thing is you want it to be comfortable and not interfere with how your hand feels during practice. But it should feel snug but not too tight. Now also, in order to help build the joints of the lower fingers, or all the fingers, these rubber bands are of different sizes and different strengths. And you can get them at any hardware store or any store that sells novelties. Now when you put it on so that it's towards the end of the fingers. This gives the most leverage against the finger action itself, which helps strengthen the joints. And there's no set pattern of motion. You can move one finger at a time, two fingers, all of the fingers. It really doesn't matter. The main thing of it is to do it maybe a couple times a day so that you strengthen the joints between the fingers, so that when you are hitting, the joints don't separate, causing a lot of the little vessels to break. This will just strengthen the hand. Also, in order to help strengthen the wrist area, I strongly recommend using a weight. Now, this is 5 pounds. Now, it doesn't really matter the type of weight, or it could be a weight that you hold, like a weightlifter's weight. But the main thing of it is to work the widest range of motion that you can with your wrist. Circular motion, up and down motion, keeping the forearm out so that the forearm also gets some strengthening and exercise during this. But at the same time, take your time, move slow and distinctly. Make the motions so that you feel all the tendons, the joints, all the muscles in the wrist being applied. Notice how the hand moves from the right to the left. This gives a broader range of motion and ensures using all the muscles and ligaments in the wrist area. This is a very important exercise because your wrist takes a lot of punishment. So you will do whatever you can to strengthen it and make it so that it's able to withstand tremendous pressure. Remember, do it slow and easy. Take your time. Don't hurry. Now this is a piece of rubber cut from a car inner tube. It's about 2 inches. And you use it to strengthen the extension muscles up around the shoulder, the triceps. You'll notice as Steve extends his arm forward, he also spreads them out as far as he can, and then he lets them drop back to his body. He'll go back and forth for 1 solid minute. This is something that is excellent for helping develop all the muscles that you'll use during the power punch exercise. Notice the elbows drop back towards the body, and then extend fully out, spreading out as you do so as hard as you can. Keep this up for 1 minute, back and forth. Now you can also use this inner tube piece of rubber for a punching extension itself, and the amount of tension will depend on where you hold the rubber in the background. Like the left hand holding it back closer to the chest will cause the right arm to have to extend further, therefore causing more leverage against the punch. This is something that will just give you a broad range of motion, is very inexpensive, and it'll allow you to exercise the muscles and the arm action necessary to develop the power punch. Use both of the hands. Don't just favor one. The hand grips are also very, very important relative to your training, especially for the lower knuckles. Now, this is an exercise which is also done for 1 minute. You squeeze them as fast as you can for 15 seconds, then you hold them for 15 seconds, squeeze them for 15 seconds, hold them for 15 seconds. You'll notice the emphasis is mainly on the lower 3 fingers. The pointer finger is left out, so it doesn't help squeeze the squeegee. Use a light grip, so that way there you can do it more times and develop more of the hand fibers. But again, squeeze it as fast as you can, 15 seconds, then hold it. Hold it like you're trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip, and then squeeze it again. Now this is a wrist roll. This wooden bar is about 12 to 18 inches long. It's got a hole drilled through it, and this rope is pushed through it, tied, and then extends down to a weight, which is roughly about 2.5 to 5 pounds. I recommend 2.5 pounds. And secure it however you can so that it's attached to the weight so it won't break loose. Now the idea of this exercise is to be able to stand erect, keeping your body in line with the head and the feet. And when you raise the weight, raise it so that your arms are straight out and your hands are slightly above shoulder level with the weight off the ground. The rope should be just long enough so that the weight is off the ground. Once you start the exercise, you will continue the exercise without stopping for 1 minute, and as fast as you can, roll it up and down for 1 minute. You're going to try and do it at least twice. Now, Steve is rolling it up on the inside. That means that he's rolling his hands away from him, and that will bring the rope on the inside. He's making each move independent. He's not letting it slip. He's actually rolling it up with his hands and rolling it down with his hands, both of the hands equally. As soon as the rope gets to the end, it will begin to roll up on the outside, which is a different exercise. It calls for different muscles to be employed. Notice now the rope is closest to you. That's on the outside. And do this for 1 minute. This is a tiger push-up. You keep your feet flat to the surface. Your knees will be directly below your rear end. Your back will be level. Your arms will be straight. Your hands will be together, creating a heart shape between the fingers. And the head will be facing straight down, so that when you raise the rear end, you will be in a V, and then your forehead will go down and touch the hole between the hands, and then you'll come back up full into position, and then you'll go back down, up and down for 1 minute. This is an excellent exercise for the upper back and arm muscles. Okay, let's get on to the basic stance itself for practicing the punch. Now, this is just the stance. This is not how you will fight. This is in order to exercise. Most people who are right-handed have a tendency to favor the right side. This is because this is their power side. They flow on this side. I recommend against this when you're practicing, because you'll have a tendency to overextend, to reach out. Notice how I'm reaching out. This is a natural tendency. Without thinking, I'm going to have a tendency to extend my body. See, I'm pushing. Bruce Lee used to do this a lot when he did his punch, and it tended to push the opponent away from him. The secret of the punch is to drop the individual right in front of you so that he doesn't go back. In order to do that, I strongly recommend that you lead with the left leg, with the left foot. Now, I'm right-handed, but I will lead with the left. I will place my body so that it favors the left, but I will then practice with the right as far as the hand motion. This allows me to control my range of motion much easier, much better. I do this for two reasons. One is to get the understanding of the control, but also to be able to know that I want to control my center line. My center line is something that is very important to control when I'm in close range punching, because I want to be able to use both of my hands. Now, the center line, it means that at any time you can touch your opponent with either hand. If you pivot too far, you're going to notice that the right arm, if it's blocked, will not be able to, the left arm won't be able to be used. And this is going to be really restrictive to what your technique is. The idea is to be able to do short punches, so that if you're blocked, you can be able to still sweep with your left hand and still function even though the arm has been blocked. And that gives you a broader range of techniques that you can employ. This is very important. So again, don't extend out. Most people will tend to bend because they like the pivoting action, but you can easily be trapped. Try and not bend too far. Try and favor the short range. Now, this is the short action itself. Notice there's just a slight pivotal action in the arms. This way I can use both my hands equally. It's a very efficient and functional way to apply close-in technique. I always assume I'm very close to my opponent. Now first, let's get into what the floating or power punch is as far as its basic position. The hand actually hangs at the wrist. This is why I have a tendency to call it the floating punch, because the hand has no tension. Notice the fingers are loose and relaxed. There's no tension in it. There's just a loose, comfortable feeling. The hand will be vertical. It will not lay down flat towards the surface. It will not hang down as it normally would facing the ground. It will hang vertical but at an angle. This will give it good lift when you're doing the punch. Now, when you're practicing the 3-inch punch and you're hanging down, you want to use the pointer finger knuckle to determine the distance. this is what you will always do in order to practice. You will just reach up with your pointer finger, touch with the knuckle loosely, and then you will be able to draw the hand up, snapping it into the punching position, the driving position of hitting with the lower two knuckles. Now, as you're doing this, just prior to your hand snapping up, you're going to find that you want to close the hand in a rolling action where the fingers will roll up and close as you snap the hand. This is something that you want to do without thinking. Don't close it too late. Don't close it too early. You'll close it in one swift action and then fire it in. This is something that you'll just have to have a feeling for by practicing again and again, again and again. Now, this is the 3-inch. When you do the 1-inch, you will use the hand knuckle itself, the pointer finger knuckle of the hand, and you will make a very short snapping action. Notice how short this is compared to what the 3-inch was. It's just a very short action. This will be much quicker and is usually done with a jamming technique by the body. But when you roll up the fingers come up in a similar fashion to the 3, a little faster, but at the same time they come up just prior to the striking action itself. Don't be in a hurry. Just practice this slow and easy against the surface like a light bag, just getting that snapping action itself. Notice how it just snaps at the wrist. The hand will suddenly snap up, hitting with the lower two knuckles as I drive my hand forward. This is very important because it's a very basic movement. Now, the arm action itself is very important. You notice that when my arm goes forward, it recoils. In other words, it pulls back, snaps back. It doesn't pull back. It snaps back, not past the elbow position if it was just hanging, but down to where it normally would be, like there. Notice how it just pops up and back. It doesn't go back past my body. And also, it's like a bullet being fired from a gun. The more snap that I can get out of my wrist forearm action, the more power that will be generated through the snapping action of my hand. Notice that it's almost an invisible type of action. The faster I do it, the more action I get. Now I'm just practicing the action of the hand itself rather than the punch, the snapping action of the arm itself. Each of these is a different exercise. Now this is the 3-inch overall body position. Notice the leg will have a tendency to drop. The right leg will have a tendency to drop as if you are falling, and then you'll catch yourself. The left knee will move also a little bit, but the primary drop is in the right leg. And you'll watch the whole body. Notice how it just sort of drops and twists slightly. At the same time you do that, you will hit with the hand. The action is very noticeable in the 3-inch because you're driving it forward. It's almost as if you're driving it forward with the knee. This is to give it a certain amount of spontaneous explosiveness in the movement itself, rather than just the arm itself. Now on the 1-inch, you'll notice that it's more abbreviated. The 1-inch is much shorter. It's like a twitch. This is a movement that, again, you do usually when you jam. It's very common to mix the 1 and 3 up, and actually I'm just really separating these for purposes of practice. Notice it's just kind of a twitch. Just not as deep, it's not as defined, but yet you can specifically see that there's a movement. Again, very light movement in the other leg, but the right leg, which is the primary movement, is very distinct, but short. Now, this is the jamming action. Notice how this is where you would probably normally use the power punch, where you've jammed your opponent and you're just sort of going to hit and move your body forward. And that's what will happen with that leg action. It'll sort of drive you forward a little bit. This way here you can get the maximum effect in extremely close range to your opponent. Now this is the 3-inch raised heel. The 3-inch raised heel just gives you more drive into the bag. It gives you more explosiveness. But you'll notice that I'm doing the same basic 3-inch movement with the body. The knee will really penetrate. The foot raises. The hand snaps in. The hand will close. I'm using the finger to judge my 3-inch distance. But the foot will actually propel the whole body forward very distinctly. It's just like I've stepped on a tack and I'm jerking my heel up. This is a very distinct raised heel position. It can really add a lot of snap, a lot of explosiveness to the blow itself. Now these are just basic exercises. Don't be caught up in having to do everything perfect. You'll just get a feeling for it. Now on the 1 inch, it's different in so much as it's abbreviated again. Look at the heel. It just barely raises. Again, it's very often because you've jammed the individual, so you hardly notice the leg motion in the same way, but yet you'll feel it. Someone watching you won't be able to tell the difference, but you'll feel the difference when you spring up that heel and snap forward. It'll just add that extra pizzazz to the blow itself as you drive it in. Notice though, it's just that slight knee foot action. Pop the bag. You just always want to pop the bag. And you're not trying to drive it in the next room. No power. Just slow and easy. Now also you want to work on control of distance. This is a very important part of minimizing damage to your opponent if you don't want to. The degree of damage will depend upon how much and how deep you hit the individual. You notice here I'm just snapping at the bag, hitting the surface. Sometimes I'll actually hit the bag a little bit just for my own feeling of control. Also, you want to be able to have what we call long range motion, where your hands are down by your side and you bring them up very quickly. This is where you're going to snap the technique up and whip it into the bag. This is a long range. In other words, the 1 and 3 is basically 1 and 3 inches. Whereas the long range can be anything from, say, 5 inches out is considered long range. From the hips, it's basically the same thing, whether your hands are down or from the hips. It's always a sudden, springy action in which you penetrate into the bag, but your hand does not close down into the firing action until you actually hit the bag. You don't float the punch prior to the bag. You actually hit the bag in the same way as if you were doing a 1 or 3 inch punch. It's just that your timing's got to be better because you're coming from such a distance. It makes a big difference. So take your time when you're practicing these basic long range motions. Folding of the arms is the same way. It's being able to know that when you come out of that position, you're going to fire directly into your target. It's a surprise attack, but it's something that is done in the same way as far as the end result as the 1 and 3. It's just that your hands start from a different position. And when you're practicing the 1 and 3 inch punch, practice each segment. Practice the hands, practice the arm motion. All of these are important segments in order to make it work. Now next is a technique of exercise that will help you keep balance in your motion. I do this to help my center line, but also to bring my energy forward in one smooth action. You notice I bring both hands forward at the same time. Now whether I'm just bringing it up for balance or I'm actually blocking, it doesn't really matter. The main thing of it is you notice it's a single action. Both hands move at the same time. This allows me to have a good positive offensive defensive position with my left hand even though my right hand is attacking. But again, I use it to keep body control. Now here's a good exercise. It's a coffee can filled with sand. Usually it's about 10, 12 pounds. This one's about 5 pounds. But it's something that will help you develop the proper snapping action in the 1 and 3 inch floating punch. I use a flat surface, a board, or it doesn't matter what it is, it can be a table, and I sit down so that I'm comfortable so I can just concentrate on the action itself. Now I'm going to practice the 1 and 3, and I'm also going to practice the action of my forearm in the recoil action. Remember, that's very important. The recoil action of the 1 and 3 inch punch is very important. Notice it's just a slow definition of motion, being able to define the 3 inch, rolling my hand closed, and working the snap. And then the little action of the forearm to pop it. Remember, pop it, recoil it. And all this is the simplicity of the punch itself. It's not complicated. It's just a simple matter of doing these little actions. This is the 3 inch. Notice I'm actually using the end of my finger. It doesn't matter. The end of your finger clear up to the joint there. This is fine. But the main thing of it is that snapping action, that sudden projection of the lower 2 knuckles to snap it in as you project forward with that forearm. That's what the 3-inch is all about. Now the 1-inch is of course a little different, and you want to really feel that difference, that closeness, that getting that hand knuckle of the pointer finger, and then that sudden upbringing of the lower 2 knuckles. The recoil will be different because it's much shorter, so therefore there has to be a little more of a jolting action of the forearm. That will propel it out. And a lot of people, they think in terms of just the floating punch with this rich action, but it's not true. You can also do the junjiang, they call it, and that's an open palm strike. This is a very favorite technique of Bruce Lee. Instead of using the closed fist and ripping somebody's head off, he'd use the junjiang, which would really knock somebody over, but it was, you know, not as explosive and dynamic, but yet it's something that he felt was a good technique. It could be used for the body. It could be used as a jolting action to the head. It was just a good complementary alternative technique to the power punch. And notice my other hand moves a little bit as I do that, as a rule. But it's the same basic action. Now, okay, now let's review some other positions using the power punch. This, of course, is the right stance instead of the left stance. Now, I use the basic body motion as in the left side, but you'll find that the legs feel a little different when you do it with the right side, so it's really good to practice feeling that change of position, change of flow. But you'll notice that I have very short motion. I don't reach out, extend, or push. That's because of the left-handed training. The knee itself is very distinct, the action itself, almost as if I'm twisting the body slightly. This helps project the energy forward, but yet allows you to stay in control. You notice the body doesn't really project out too far as you do this. And the center line, notice I don't really pivot the center line too much. And I snap the left hand forward at the same time. These are just basic exercises to establish good habits. Notice the flow. One single action. Very simple motion. Knee, body, arm, hand. You can add the raised heel. Now this is a side stance. You don't have to be front, either right or left. You can actually fire from the side, but you notice the use of the body is sort of a projection. A little different than the other punches, because this way here you don't have the same energy base, the power base. But you can still use the same basic, front projection. Notice how the knees now will go forward, just a jolting action. It's just a sharp jolting action. The left knee, which the foot is pointed towards us, the knee will tend to go outward, tend to project outward, whereas the forward knee tends to push forward a little bit, and the whole body tends to go forward on that straight line. You can repeat these again and again till they feel smooth and comfortable to you. Should be effortless. One beautiful move. Okay, now I want to introduce you to the bag that I've been using. This is a vinyl bag. It's filled with sawdust, and it weighs about 10 pounds, 12 pounds. 8 to 12 pounds is a real good weight because it makes it very sensitive. It's a fairly solid bag, and it's been packed really tight. And when you hit it, if you hit it on the surface, it moves very easily. But you want it to be able to, if you just touch it, that it doesn't move. And if a big bag is hit, really light, it doesn't move. But also if you don't hit it too hard, it still doesn't move. So you want something that'll change its movement without any problem. This is a phone book that I use as far as the general thickness, and place it over the chest so that where you see the ELL, that's about the solar plexus area, and that's generally where I suggest you hit. Stay away from the heart, and keep it snug to the chest, flat to the chest, real tight, otherwise you'll get a double shock. Keep the fingers out of the way or you'll get them smashed. Keep them tight up towards the top and the bottom. It's very important that you always keep it snug and in the same place. Now, I put a board in there very often if a person's going to hit me a lot, because that dissipates a lot of the blow. This spreads the blow out and stops it from going through as much. And if you don't have a real thick phone book, I suggest you use this 1/4-inch piece of plywood. But if you're going to practice much, it's good to use it. But please wrap your hand, because this is a little harder on the hand. When you smack that, it's fairly firm. Okay, let's review through the general application of the floating punch. This is, of course, the hand motion. Notice how I try and just tie in the snapping action at the wrist and hand with the singular motion of the arm, that snapping, recoiling action of the arm. This is very, very important. Practice this again and again and again till it becomes very, very familiar to you, till it becomes second nature, because this is the key to the floating punch, the key to the action that creates the internal explosiveness, the concussion that makes the lungs collapse, that creates that tremendous shock to your opponent. Just again and again, fluid, flowing, snapping, mix it up, feel the action, the definition of motion, then snap it to just feel that explosiveness, that pop, that recoil. You can't do this too many times. Okay, now let's get into some meditation, which will help you in being able to develop explosive internal power, but also to train correctly. This is paper meditation. It was taught to us by Bruce Lee. It's an excellent, excellent exercise for flow, for energy flow, for internal energy flow as well as kinetic energy flow. Now you take a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, wrap it up really tight into a ball, get it really wrinkled, and then you're going to spread it all the way out again, but you're going to leave the wrinkles in it. Don't be concerned about it. And lay it down in front of you so that it's fairly centered and not too, far from the body, so you have to reach for it. Then clear your mind. Breathe in deep, clear out the lungs, and feel sort of a centering. And now put your hands together, bring them down, and slowly, without too much pressure on the paper, you begin to just iron it out. Iron it out. And initially when you begin this, just develop the actual proper practice itself of motion. Keep your body fairly upright and breathe in as you come up. And as soon as you start spreading out your hands, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. And you're just working with the general flow of the action. But as soon as you've got this down, as soon as you feel comfortable with it, then you will internalize and imagine that instead of the air going out of your lips, they go out of your arms. And that's why now you notice I'm very pursed-lipped, very tight-lipped. That's just so very little air can go out. And the rest of it, I imagine, is going out through my arms, is going out like a flowing river. And it's all my power, and I feel this flowing, steady energy flow of energy across the paper. I feel it going out, becoming more powerful, but very consistent. And I can see this mentally. I can feel it physically. And you do the same basic motion that you did before. You do that steady, slow, sweeping action of the paper. Bring it back up into the prayer position. But at the same time, you're breathing in and out in the same way. You're exhaling on the downstroke, inhaling on the upstroke. Breathing out through pursed lips. It's a very important exercise. It'll really help with the energy flow. And one of the important things that we learn from this particular exercise, which we were very surprised, but we went down into crowds and tested this, is that as you develop that inner power, that energy flow out through the arms, you really don't feel it. But you'll begin to feel it when you go out and you push your way through a group or through a crowd. And this is part of the exercise. Imagine your energy is flowing. It's very dynamic. Flowing out, exploding out. And it'll be quite a different feeling to you. Very powerful. Now the next one is candle meditation. And this is to gain more control over your internal energy itself. The candle should be slightly off the surface, but within easy visual range. It can be something that helps create the proper mental atmosphere. Something oriental, of course, makes it feel more like a true meditation. And you want the candle itself to be vertical, where it just flows upward. And you want to be, away from any draft, so that you can concentrate fully on it, focus on it. Try not to blink. Try and just put all of your being into centering at the base of the flame. Not at the flame itself, but at the base of the flame. And what you're trying to do is like you're funneling down your thoughts and your energy as if you're trying to disrupt the flow of the flame. And your whole being is surrounding the flame, and you want to just knock that flame loose. You want to just joint the flame. It's an excellent exercise for focus and concentration. Breathe in and out very slowly and evenly. Hello again. Hello again. Well, now you've had an overview of the tape. You can see it's really not going to be that complicated. But it is necessary for you to review through the tape a number of times to see what is going to be required of you, what you're going to need to spend a little more time on. As you start working with the tape, try and see what feels comfortable or uncomfortable. Anytime that you're having a problem, it's a matter of just going back and really listening to the tape. But at the same time, it's something that anyone can do regardless of age, sex, or condition, because it only does take a few tenths of a second or even hundredths of seconds when you're doing it correctly. But you have to coordinate that whole body action into a single flowing dynamic flow. And that's, of course, not only the body itself, but the internalized training. A lot of people think just in terms of the physical, explosive energy. No, it's also your ability to concentrate, your ability to condense down your energy and explode it out one single point. And that's why meditation is important. And if you have different meditations that I offer you, fine. It doesn't matter, as long as that you have that internal control to complement your use of energy. Now, I do have a few tapes that could be complementary to your overall training. I have Chi Sao, which is sticking hands, which is very close combative exercises for controlling your opponent offensively and defensively. I have Fon Sao, which is more long range and freer moving, but it's also to trap and control your opponent's energy. It's one of Bruce's favorites. Closing the gap, how to enter from outside the range of kicks to approach and get in and do your technique on a karate man or a kung fu man or a boxer or a wrestler, it doesn't matter. How to multiply your energy, your power, 8 levels of power. Speed, how to multiply and triple your speed of reactions as well as your speed of motion. As well as some meditation techniques for personal growth and for accelerated learning, not only in the martial arts, but in everything that you do. So, please, if I can be of any help, drop me a line. If there's any questions that I can help your practice get better and be more successful with the punch, please feel free to ask. Now, I want to thank very much Steve Friend for helping me doing the demonstrations, Irene Demile and Michelle Demile for helping me tape, and above all, I want to thank Tom Sandor for helping in the ideas of editing and putting this tape together. So again, I really wish you the best in your training, and be patient. Aloha.